This was supposed to be a travel day, both for Zach Boren and for Austin Ward heading out to the Fiesta Bowl. Ohio State was going to be on the way. It was going to be the semifinal, but no. Instead, it is a way too early autopsy version of the Boren Blitz on the beat, presented by the Waterworks. Welcome in. He is Zach. I am Austin. And I don't know, are you feeling any better yet, Zach, from what happened on New Year's Eve? I haven't had a chance to catch up with you yet.
I don't think so, Austin. I feel like, and I'm sure a lot of Ohio State fans feel this way, you are in a nightmare that you have not woken up from. And that's kind of what Wednesday night felt like. It's just like whenever something good was going to happen and you were expecting it to happen, it never did. And everything that could have went against Ohio State's way basically did. It's just hard. Coming off the Big Ten championship game, you would think there was a lot of things that this team learned from, took from that game. And it just kind of felt like it was a rinse and repeat of what they did against Indiana. And I think that's the thing that's so hard for Ohio State fans and myself to accept, because if they would have looked like a different team, whereas in their foot was on the gas pedal, the offense was moving at a quicker pace. The defense were doing some different things. They were putting pressure on the quarterback, and they just lost. And Miami played a perfect game. Okay, I think we could accept that. But to know that we ended the season the way we did with back-to-back, almost felt lethargic. I don't know the right word to put on it. It just stinks. And it's going to be hard to swallow for the next 8 months. I know for Ohio State fans, but more specifically, the football program, right? The coaches, the players. I'm sure if you go in that locker room, a lot of those guys were expecting to be playing in Miami, Florida in a number of weeks. And that was the expectation. And when that doesn't happen, two things can go, right? You either come together as a team and you fight and turn things around and have a great offseason, or there can become culture issues and a lot of finger pointing and a lot of guys moping around. So the next couple of weeks, especially with once you get guys in from the transfer portal and whatnot, it is very crucial for this Ohio State team to get their offseason onto the right foot.
Yeah, and we saw Ohio State acting quickly to already move into the 2026 offseason. You had Cortez Hankton announced as the new wide receivers coach on Thursday. You saw a dozen plus players enter the transfer portal, and then you've already seen Ohio State host a handful of visitors on the flip side in the two-way street of the transfer portal. So they're at work on that, Zach. But, you're looking at that current roster and you're trying to retain starters. You're trying to get some guys back who could be NFL draft options and draft eligible. Silver lining is not the way I want to phrase this. But if you're looking at making another run at a national championship right now, Ohio State is at least not distracted by playing a game. I regret saying it out loud that way. But one of the things that Ohio State has talked about in the past is how the competitive disadvantage that it was under when it couldn't have over the weekend hosted anybody in the transfer portal. It wouldn't have been having these decisions made either way for their players. So they would rather be playing. I would rather be covering the Fiesta Bowl. I'm not suggesting that this is a good thing for Ohio State, but that's the situation that they're in now. All they can do is maximize the opportunities that are in front of them because they lost last Wednesday. That part sucks, but to your point, Zach, what else can you do? Now you have to move forward.
Yeah, what you're hoping is that this transfer portal offseason, the next couple of weeks, whatever you call it nowadays in college football, feels a lot more like January of 24 rather than January of 25 this past year, right? Because when you're playing in those playoff games, you're playing in a national championship. Yes, you're hoisting that trophy at the end of the year, but you're behind in retaining your roster. You're behind in going out and getting new talent. Like, there are so many things that you're behind the eight ball on. And as you saw this past year, Ohio State may have overreached for a couple of guys that they thought, could be really talented, could bring a lot to their program. And you kind of saw some swing and misses. But let's be honest, you don't have the time to host guys. You don't have the time to do the deep dive, to do all those things. Whereas in 24, right, they lost to Missouri. They're coming home. It's a lackluster year. And And you saw them be very aggressive in the portal with Quinshon Judkins and Will Howard. And the list goes on and on, right? With guys that they brought to the program. So what are they going to do this year with that added time? Are they going to be aggressive with going out and getting some guys that can really help their team and be starters or be very high contributors in 26? Here's the one thing, though, Austin, that has a great feel to it, again, compared to 24 and 25. There's a lot of dudes coming back, right?
Yeah.
Like this team's going to be a loaded team. And you saw in 25, like the team was decimated, right? That was the talk, and they had to fill these holes and they felt rushed as well. Now they can really focus in on what guys are going to help a team and where they can slot them in, because there are so many guys coming back. Their roster is super talented. They do have a lot of guys with snaps, meaningful snaps under their belt. So how do they take what's out there in the transfer portal, thousands of players, right, and add to what they currently have to maximize their team?
So on Zach Boren's big board for the transfer portal, what position do you think Ohio State needs to attack most aggressively?
I think you obviously have to go to the defense side of the football. With the Scott or with the news of West and Scott going to transfer portal, I think corner is a glaring hole. I also think you look up front. Can you get Caden McDonald to stay? That is, in my opinion, the number one question. If you can get Caden McDonald to stay, you are light years ahead from where you are as a program if he leaves for the NFL. And so if you can spend money and entice him to stay and be around the program again, I think that's not solidifies, but that definitely helps the interior. I think you need to go out and get a high production defensive end. Everyone's looking at Chaz Coleman. There's some other names being floated around. In my opinion, there's just a couple pieces. I know everyone's talking about linebacker. This is what I'm going to say, and who knows who watches this podcast, but whatever. And guys that are on social media that seem to have an opinion about players and think that the coaching staff doesn't know what they're doing based off of hearsay in the portal. It's complete BS. Like, guys, get off your high horse. You don't know everything. Just because there's a player that's a high production player at another school doesn't mean they're going to be great for Ohio State, and doesn't mean Ohio State wants them, right? There's multiple guys that people are talking about on social media that, like, they're bad-mouthing Ohio State coaches for not making a run at them. Guess what? They probably don't want them. And one thing I'll say, there are some guys who have not had a lot of playing time on this Ohio State team that are going to be absolute studs next year. And let's look at the linebacking core on defense, right? You've got 3 dudes in the linebacking core right now that are going to be absolute monsters, right? And that's not even including some other guys that have been on the field, that have made some plays, right? Like, that linebacking group is deep. They are talented, and just because there's some high production players out there in the portal doesn't mean you need to go get them.
No. And I don't think it's out of the question that James Laurinaitis would not pursue a veteran linebacker out there. But Zach, if James makes an evaluation, or Mark Pantoni makes an evaluation, or Matt Patricia makes an evaluation, and they say that's not the player that's a fit, and they don't want to have a visit, or they don't schedule a visit, or they don't make a financial offer, my personal opinion, and I think you share it, is those guys know what they want, and they're very good, and they've certainly earned the benefit of the doubt. So I know it's more fun to be on the outside and put together mock drafts and fantasy portal activity. I don't think it's impossible that Ohio State wouldn't add a linebacker, but to this point, I don't think that there's one out there that is going to force them to alter the plans that include Peyton Pierce, TJ Alford, or Riley Pettijohn. So I'm cool with that. Whatever they decide, that's not always a foolproof plan to just constantly give carte blanche to the coaching staff and trust every decision they make, because I am personally now, right as we sit here on a Boren Blitz, skeptical of moving forward without bringing in an offensive coordinator. So it's not as if every decision has to be accepted out of whole cloth, but a linebacker evaluation, I'm going to ride probably with the guys in the room there.
Here's another thing I'll say for the fan out there that thinks they know everything. The agents nowadays are the sketchiest, most car salesman guys in the entire world, right? There is no way of vetting agents. In the NFL, you literally have to pass certain tests. You have to get approved by the NFL, by the NFLPA. There's so many different things. In college, guess what? Uncle Johnny can go be your agent and be literally pimping you out anywhere at any time, even in the beginning of the season, which happens, right? So these stories that get brought up on social media, on Twitter and everything else, a lot of times, guys, they're pimped out by the agent because they're just looking for the top dollar. And so all these people, all these Twitter handles, all these guys that want to believe everything they see on Twitter, guess what? 90% of it's false. And all of it's coming from these agents who are just looking for the top dollar. So guess what? They're going to say so-and-so's visiting Ohio State. Because guess what? To Texas Tech, to a Texas A&M, to Oregon, Miami, the list goes on and on. Guess what? All that does is get them an extra 50 to 100K, and that's what they want. They're just chasing dollars. And so Ohio State sits back and is like, hey, listen, these sketchy agents, they can play whatever game they want to play. We are going to hunker down and we're going to make the decisions that's best for our team, best for our production in 26. And at the end of the day, here's the biggest thing, Austin, that's best for our locker room. Because those guys that have those sketchy agents, which there's a ton of them, right? It's not good for the locker room because those agents are in those players' ears nonstop. And guess what? Those are the same guys that when they're not getting what they want during the season, or they're not, being as productive as they think they should be, it's the coach's fault. It's the program's fault. It's never the player's fault. And so you have to do a deep dive into who are you really bringing into this football program? Are you bringing in a player that has realistic expectations, that has a good head on his shoulders, that has a good support system? Or are you bringing in a very talented player that comes with a whole bunch of issues, including the way he thinks things should run, what he's valued at, what his uncle or best friend thinks he should be paid, all these added benefits? Like, there are so many different things that go into when you are recruiting kids, when you're trying to get kids in the portal. And that's what I think just upsets so many coaches in college football. And that's why it's such a big discussion, because there is no rhyme or reason to agents, the way they act, the way that they are, and I'm going to say it again, pimping out these guys, because that's what they do. And so that's what everyone talks about when there needs to be a streamline in college football. That's what they talk about, because you're going to see it happen way too much, and you're just going to see it explode more and more and more. And it's worse this year than it was last year, which it was in the previous year. So that's my rant, Austin. And for everyone who watches this, and hopefully people talk about this on Twitter, that guess what? Just because you think a kid is really good at another university, he might not be at Ohio State.
Yeah, I can't argue with any part of that rant. I endorse it fully. And I got to remind everyone, it's about finding trust overall with Ohio State and with the Waterworks, because the seasons change. Comfort doesn't. Call the Waterworks and Hetter Heating, Cooling, and Plumbing for maintenance, installation, and repairs, or visit online at thewaterworks.com. The Waterworks and Hetter Heating, Cooling, and Plumbing. It's a proud sponsor of Ohio State athletics. So I said before the portal discussion, Zach, about Cortez Hankton already coming in for Ohio State, Ryan Day moving very quickly to find a wide receivers coach. I wonder where you land on this stance that I've taken, that Ryan Day still needs to hire an offensive coordinator. Now, I know that the staff is currently full of full-time coaches. You would have to look at this and maybe work around the unlimited cap on coaching, and maybe you would have to hire an offensive coordinator who does no recruiting whatsoever. I don't know if there are rules for or against it, or if Ohio State would just be setting a precedent that the rest of college football would follow. I don't know. But I don't think that Ryan Day can give up the CEO role and go back to being more involved offensively or moving forward. Because I think he would have to do that if Keenan Bailey or Tyler Bowen or Billy Fessler take on more responsibility, which is on the table for Ohio State still coming out of the college football playoff. But you look at the schedule next year for Ohio State, you look at the personnel that's coming back, I feel strongly that they're going to need to hire somebody else to that staff. And how that works, a head count or salary pool, I don't know the answer. I wouldn't pretend to, but just looking at it from the outside, I think that's what Ryan Day needs.
Yeah, Ryan is a top 3 coach in all of college football, right? Hands down, he is a top 3 coach. We have seen it over the years when he gets pulled away from that CEO type role where he can truly be a head coach. It affects the team. It affects himself. It affects production. And that's not me saying Ryan Day's a bad play caller, because to be honest, I think if he's a play caller, he might be one of the best in the country, right?
Yeah.
But when you are a head coach, especially at a place like Ohio State, there's so much more that your job entails rather than just calling plays. And that is a full-time job of its own. And when you are diving into that, it's obviously taken away from other things. And I fully agree with you, Austin. I think if you look at this team and especially the schedule going into 26, you need an offense coordinator that has some experience, that can kind of run with the offense, be able to game plan, be able to call plays, do some things where he's able to take ownership of it. And I think if you promote from within, and nothing against those guys that you already mentioned, but none of those guys have really ever done it. And so when that happens, as the head coach, obviously you're spending a lot of time and energy into spending time with the offense, into game planning, into calling plays, doing all those things. And it's the same thing with Brian Hartline this past year, right? Brian never really done it. Never really did it. And I think Ryan was probably spending more time on the offense side of the football than he probably should have or wanted to. But again, that's, Matt Patricia's defense was firing all cylinders. But you look at what Ryan was able to do in 24, and obviously the whole Jim Knowles thing I get, but imagine if you had that Chip Kelly standpoint, who was able to kind of, former head coach, be able to run the offensive staff, do those things. And then you package that with Matt Patricia, who obviously former head coach, is able to run the defense, do those things. And now Ryan's able to be fully invested into giving support to the offense and defense, giving support to the players, doing the things that he should really be focusing on. Then I think it's a pretty dangerous team. So not saying they can't be dangerous if they're promoting from within, but exactly to your point, you look at the offense and how much talent they're bringing back. If you can bring in an OC that has years of experience doing it, that's been there before, that when the pressure gets turned up in week 2 at Texas and you need to dial something up, there's no hesitation at all. They're dialing it up. They know exactly what to do. The last thing you want is you go to Texas and guess what? You get someone who I was watching Nick Saban, right, leading up to the playoffs, where he said he had defense coordinator once who had marbles in his mouth, and he never called a defense play ever again after that because he was calling it. That's the last thing you want in Texas, right? That the bullets start flying. You get an offense coordinator that starts hesitating and not really sure on the game plan or what they want to do or the identity that they want to have. And let's be honest, we kind of saw that in the last 2 games, right? And so you need someone to go in there and own it. And I'm not saying it can't be one of those guys, but without years of experience and without doing it, it's really hard to do.
Yeah, and those are the decisions that have to be made already. And right now for Ryan Day, maybe doesn't have to be done immediately, but those processes because the transfer portal is open, players are coming, players are going, coaching staff alignment has to be decided before you start getting into spring ball, which will thankfully be here before we know it. Within 2 months, mat drills will be going again, and Zach and I will be able to talk about some more positive things maybe in 2026 as Ohio State regroups, reloads, rebuilds for another run at a national championship. This one came to an end before any of us were anticipating. So, we were hoping to have 3 or 4 more of these Boren Blitzes breaking down opponents and breaking down bowl games, but that's not what the situation is. And thanks for bearing with us as we turn the page from 2025 to 2026. For Zach Boren, I am Austin Ward. This has been The Beat, presented by the Waterworks, and we will talk to you tomorrow.